Oh my god, there's a huge bee out there. I'm on the 19th floor, like how? I just know this too. I gotta do so much editing for this video because I just lost my ability to speak eloquently.
Hello everyone, this is my second trial, I think, at BookTube. Today I really wanted to do the mid-year freakout tag. I have watched a few of those from other BookTube channels that I really love. For example, Chloe, who I adore. I think she's so pretty, oh my goodness. And like her content just makes me so happy and makes me want to read books. One thing about me is that I don't actually buy a lot of books. In fact, I don't remember last time I physically bought a book. In terms of like actual physical books, I don't typically buy them because I actually in the past have worked in the library and my mom works in the library, so like we have access to a lot of books. So to summarize my first half of the year, as all of you guys know, because of COVID, a lot of us are stuck home, so definitely, like many of you who enjoy reading, I definitely read a lot more than I would normally do. However, majority of the books I read are actually Chinese BL novels. It's a very specific genre, but if you are into that genre, it gets so exciting and fascinating and incredible. So for me to do this tag, I really have to think deep upon some of the English materials I've read. If not, I definitely have to relate it back to or talk about my beloved Chinese BL novels. In total, I think I read somewhere around like 40 books, which is a lot more than I normally would. I just want to show you like all the physical books. You can't see, but like it's all packed with physical copies that I just checked out right before quarantine started. I'll go through the tag and I've like jotted down in terms of notes. In terms of best book I've read so far, if I really have to pick one novel that I enjoy that was written in English, it would be The Ninth House. I think that was obviously dark academia. If you guys don't know, I'll link everything I've talked about down below, as well as if I can find English translation of the Chinese BL novels I've read, I'll definitely include it in my description box, so please check it out. So English novels, I haven't read a lot that blew my mind, and I'll obviously talk about the disappointments and whatnot. The Ninth House, it was very fascinating. I recommended it to my coworker and he really enjoyed it. It was fast paced. I actually read partially with the physical copies, as well as half of it was, I think I listened to it on audiobook, and that was really good. And that was actually before I discovered that you can speed up your audiobook. Silly me. It's been a while since I've read it, but there was definitely a lot of triggering content. I think someone on Twitter listed up a whole list of triggers, so definitely watch out and look out for those. But it was very exciting and I cannot wait for the next one. Moving on to the best Chinese BL. If you're not interested in this, you can definitely skip ahead. There were so many good ones that I came across this year. It was really hard. I think it'll be translated as That Someone, written by Muse, and it was about those two boys that were in high school together. It's around, I think, grade 11, I believe. One of them were transferred to that new high school because his mom passed away when he was really young. His father moved in or brought in another, I guess, single family with mom and a son, and they're the same age, one slightly older. So yeah, they moved in together, and it was their lives after. Now they're in the same high school, and the parents didn't technically marry, but they are now living together. So they're technically like step siblings, but it was their story of how slowly they fell in love, and then they couldn't be together because of there was a lot of family struggle behind why they don't accept them being together. There's a lot of societal pressures, and I'm awful at summarizing this, but the reason that I really fell in love with the story, it was just how their relationships with their parents, with their family, with each other sort of transform and grow, and how their characters grow. And it was not necessarily a good type of growth. It was, especially the one with the single father, it was him originally being very carefree and very wild in himself, eventually sort of no longer act the way he naturally was, and he became a lot more, not introverted, but like a lot more careful of what he say, how he would act. One thing that I thought was super cute, like on a lighter note, the two boys, when they first like started flirting, the one that's more wild and carefree, he would constantly change his social media handle to like reflect on or kind of give hints on what he's thinking, how their relationship is going through. It's just the cutest thing. But moving on to the next topic is favorite sequel. My favorite would be The Wicked King, and that's a sequel. First of all, I want to say that actually I think this was the only English sequel that I read, or like I read the entire one. Let me just be comfortable. The Wicked King, it was really good. I read through it really quickly. This was before I started getting back into Chinese BL novels, so I was still very much into the whole like fantasy, young adult, yada yada yada, and this was interesting. And I know a lot of people don't necessarily like Jude, but I personally really like her. I think she was very ambitious, she was very resourceful and strategic, she knows what she wants, and she has a very strong personality, whereas her sister is just, I know like she eventually turned around and went up, but like it was just too much for me. I read through it probably like in a day or two, so that means I really enjoyed it while I was reading it. I know a lot of people enjoy the series, and it's a very popular one, so I won't talk about it too much. The next one is new release that I am interested in trying, I think, but I have not yet given a stab at it. From this year that has been released so far, and I have put it on my 2020 TBR, would be Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. It's been a while since I've read any of her books. I think I listened to her Late at Midnight last year, but I listened to it on audiobook and I thought it was so long. In general, I find her books to be excessively long. However, I believe Chain of Gold is following the story in Clockwork Angel, and I remember while I was reading that series, I absolutely fell in love with it, and I think I've taken a stab at City of Bones series for a little bit, maybe a book or two, and then I read the Eternal Devices series, and I could not believe it was written by the same author. I absolutely loved Clockwork Angel and all of that. So I think it was following up that story. The only thing that is holding me back, aside from I'm getting way too invested in Chinese BL novels, but it's just so long. It looks super thick from what I've seen on BookTube and all of that. So I don't know, I'm like a little bit scared to do that, but if I do, it will mostly likely through audiobook. Excited release for this year would definitely be Vicious Spirits. I have listened to Wicked Fox, I think that's what it's called. Oh my gosh, Wicked King and Wicked Fox is like getting me all confused. But Vicious Spirits is the sequel to Wicked Fox, if I'm not mistaken. I really enjoyed the first book. I thought it was really interesting, very exciting. I'm personally super into Korean culture. I have been watching Korean drama since I was a baby, or like since I was a kid. I am a huge ARMY. I have loved BTS for, I don't know, 4 years now, and I was into K-pop culture for much longer than that, I think since I was like grade 5. So if you are into that sort of topic, Wicked Fox is super interesting because while listening to it on audiobook, it almost like felt like I was listening to a K-drama, but this time I don't need to rely on a subtitle. So that was really exciting. So I'm super excited to read the follow-up to that story and how the characters and their romance will evolve. I'm not like a huge rom-com or romance reader, but this one really had my attention. I thought it was interesting. It was like a very relaxed read. Another book that I'm extremely excited would be The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I don't know how exactly you would say her last name, but I saw like a little bit quotes here and there and I fell in love with the writing style, so I cannot wait to read that. The next one will be Disappointment. So I had a lot of disappointments this year. One of them being the sequel to Strange the Dreamer. Muse the Nightmare, I just could not get into. I think I attempted the first 5 to 10 pages and I just gave up. To be very honest, this one didn't completely live up to my expectation, but it was still a really good read. The writing style was absolutely beautiful. There's something about the main characters that I wasn't really invested in them. Also, I have a huge phobia of like moths and butterflies. Thankfully, there wasn't too much description on it. There's something very strange about how my phobia is so intense and severe, and there's absolutely no logical reason to it. Another disappointment would actually be nonfiction, and it's Digital Minimalism. I have, like many millennials, been way too obsessed with digital content, digital devices, apps, social media, all of that. So I thought that book would be, very helpful and give me a lot of insights and tips on how to overcome this obsession. But I thought it was not the most, from my perspective, I listened to it on audiobook. I don't think the structure of the book was introduced in a very logical way. The content weren't organized in a sequence that was engaging or very thought-provoking. There are definitely a lot of sentences and a lot of information on how those apps and devices are developed and why it's so difficult and challenging to overcome your obsession. But in terms of specific tips and tricks, nothing that really wowed me. That was a book that just did not live up to my expectation. It was a good book, and if you are someone who is very determined to overcome your reliance on digital devices and social media and all of that, I definitely think it would be a good read, and I don't think there are a lot of books on this topic, so it would be interesting. It's by Newport, who is very accomplished. Absolutely respect this human being. It was just not exactly a 5-star read. My Friend Anna was the first book that I read this year. It was about this girl who scammed a lot of people, and she pretended to be the socialite and billionaire heiress or something. It was a true story written by her friend at the time in New York City. I thought it was very glamorous and fascinating going into it because I did read up on the news article on this whole story and this coverage, and she was obviously eventually sentenced. I thought it was very boring. It was not well paced. I feel like there were a lot of filler contents. It was way too much emphasis on the extravagant lifestyle, what they did with their money. I don't know, being the first book of 2020, I thought that was just not a good way to start my reading. Next one would be Surprise. Okay, all of the following contents are pretty much all like Chinese BLs. One of them is called Zhenxiang, which is about this relationship of stepfather and the son. It felt very taboo because obviously it was like a romantic and a sexual relationship between father and a son, but obviously there's technically not related. What really fascinated me about this plot was the father was his heart surgeon. He had a family prior to his adoption of, not stepson, adopted son. Prior to that, he had a 9-year-old son who had an accident, and being a heart surgeon, he was operating on him. He could not save his son at the time, and he transplanted his birth son's heart to his adopted son. At the time being, he didn't adopt him. He and his family supported or sponsored him, who is an orphan. And it was about how the son, or the adopted son, eventually grew this strong affection and almost obsession to his father, and how his father would have to fight through so much morality struggle and a lot of angst in this book, and eventually accepted their relationship. There's not too much follow-up to how and their relationship afterwards when they've accepted each other, but there was just a lot of ups and downs in that story, and I thought it was just so beautifully written because there was a lot of emphasis on the atmosphere, what they were thinking, and I absolutely adore books and authors who heavily focus on the inner debate and what they're going through internally. Those are the type of books that I really, really love. And obviously, being such a taboo topic, it really shows how well the author's writing style is if you enjoy this content or this book. Another one that I fell in love with is another Chinese BL novel called Chunxiang, which is about this TV reporter and his relationship with the station's owner. I don't know what the specific title is. Again, it's a lot of like taboo and a lot of like sexual description that can be very controversial, but through the story, because him being a reporter, and he was very insistent on reporting content that can be controversial but showcase the real issues that the society is facing. The author was very good at conveying about what's wrong in the society, but because how insistent and strong and pure-hearted he is, a TV reporter is, it really helped balance the darkness behind all of those cases. And in terms of my favorite author, it would just be the two authors that wrote the books that I just mentioned. One of them is Yemao Yujiu, the other one being Jin Shi Si Chai, and I will list them if I can find it. And if you read Chinese, then I'll definitely link everything I can find. Both of them, their writing style is so beautiful. The first one, who wrote the father-son relationship, very good at depicting inner dialogue and mental state and all of those, and the other one was really good at using, I think, cases and plots to reflect. Next one, my fictional crush. There were so many characters in all of the Chinese BL novels. One of the characters that's in non-BL novels, it was I guess in Chinese we call it boy girls. The romance line was very, very light. The girl and the boy being together was the end of the novels. The guy character, whose name was Paige, was my #1 crush. He was the perfect character, very intelligent, but he was gifted, and he was one of those that's very quiet and he barely speaks and very distant. He can definitely come across as aloof, but he is very caring on the inside. He would do those like little things for the girl that is just very thoughtful, but it's not like over the top and it's not very obvious, but it's just like subtle things he does and just so sweet. He reminds me exactly of Taegi from Reply 1988, and if you have not watched that drama, I highly recommend. It was so good. It was a really great story. And the other crush, honestly every other Chinese BL stories I read, I have a crush, but I would say like my favorite would be this one called Ling Wu Yu, who is another mathematical or just genius overall, who's like really good at studying, and he had the most awful relationship with his parents, so had to overcome a lot of things on his family's part, and he became mentally, financially independent at a very young age. And the setting is in high school, so it was his story with another boy and how their relationship got closer. It was originally just, you know, friendship, and it blossomed into a relationship, but they had to overcome a lot of struggles, and from the other boy's perspective, he didn't know he wasn't straight, so he had to accept himself. Definitely coming of age type of story. His character was just so cute. He was very caring. His method of making the other boy realizing he was not straight was very thoughtful. He gave the other boy a lot of space and room to contemplate his life. It was heartbreaking, but it was also very beautiful at the same time. And in general, he was just very thoughtful. And he actually showed up in another story by the same author, and this author is called Wu Zhe, which I believe there's some translated version of her novels online already, and I absolutely love all of her stories. I think I read like 5 or 6 books by her, and this character specifically, going back to my crush, he would handmade gifts for his boyfriend. He would do just like the subtle things, he'll say the little things that just make your heart flutter and it's just so cute. Next, favorite character, going back to the story that I was telling you guys, her character was one of my favorites because she was just she was very strong-minded. No matter what people around her say to her, she does not get affected by any of those. She was extremely hardworking, very dedicated, very caring. She would go above and beyond for all of her friends, her father, and overall she was the kind of character that I don't think I'll ever be able to become, but definitely very much respect. I just want to go through all of the rest of this tag quickly because it's getting way too long, but books that made me cry pretty much every other Chinese BL novels, because I specifically pick out books that are sad. But one of them that I know has, I believe, completed translated version was 10 Year of Deep Love or something like that. It was about this couple who have been together since high school, so I think 13 years. And eventually one of them became really successful and he cheated, and it was just very heartbreaking. And the other one, who was diagnosed with cancer very early on, so I did not spoil anything. There's a lot of controversy around this novel. I believe there was plagiarism and whatnot, but if I were just to focus on the story and the plot and the writing style specifically and not overthink on any of that, it was so beautifully written, and the characters were just, I fell in love with them, not the cheater, but eventually you feel sorry and sad for what happened to him and how he coped with everything, and eventually he realized his true love was the main character, but it was a sad ending. I don't want to say too much. So that was one that made me cry a lot. And my favorite Chinese BL novels with like the special someone, that made me cry a lot. It wasn't really their relationship that made me cry, it was like the subtle struggle that they have with the people around them, especially with their family. Any sort of discussion or description on family struggle, now not that I can personally relate to them, but those always touch me on a different level, so that one really made me cry a lot. And a book that made me happy, going back to the author Wu Zhe, one of the other novels I read called 轻狂, which is called frivolous, I think that's what it's translated into. I absolutely loved that one. It was just like a very fast-paced, cute, funny story of those two boys who are in high school, not too much struggle, their relationship with their parents are good, they're not too poor, which is like the typical sort of situation of all of her other characters. They like played basketball together a lot, they had the best relationship with their friends in their friend circle. When they find out they're together, they give the most sincere congratulations and best wishes, and I screenshotted that, and it was just so beautiful because it was just, you know, it comes from the bottom of their hearts, even though they might not necessarily understand the relationship. I literally smiled from the beginning until the end like this, like from all throughout this book. It's just so cute and funny and just hilarious. A beautiful book cover. I did not read it, but I thought it was so beautiful. It's called 5 Feet Apart. In the beginning of this year, I really wanted to read the top winners of 2019 Goodreads Awards. I gone through maybe 5 or 6 of them, and I just could not continue because a lot of books, I guess genre-wise, they're not really my genre, and this one is a contemporary YA novel, I believe. I give up really quickly because I'm not super into YA contemporary anymore. I might have been back when I was in high school, but now I'm way too old for this. I am 24 and turning 25. Oh my god. This was beautiful. I thought the cover was really pretty. I don't know if you can see because of the glare. I know a lot of people who love it, and I think there's a movie based upon it, but it's not for me. Okay, books to read. That was the last one, I believe. A few that I've already started is nonfiction that I really want to educate myself better on human history and whatnot. One of them being Sapiens, the other one being 21 Lessons from 21st Century, something like that, by Yuval. I probably am butchering his name. I've listened to maybe half of the 21st Century one on audiobook, and it was very educational, very thought-provoking. Obviously it covers a lot of topics on AI, artificial intelligence, on religion, on global warming, on immigration. So a lot of the content, a lot of topics that are extremely relevant today. I think it was written about 2 years ago. So that's a book that I definitely want to get through to educate myself better on a lot of issues and current issues and history and whatnot. Sapiens as well. In terms of like lighthearted read, Chinese BL wise, I have a whole list. I will list them down below, but I really want to finish pretty much all of the books written by Wu-Zhe, who, again, I said I read already like 5 or 6 novels. One of them called Uncompatible or something, Guguburu, which I know is very famous, and I couldn't really get into it for the first couple pages, but I know it's gonna be good. So it just takes some time and be in the right mood to read her novels. English wise, beside the one that I already mentioned, I definitely have a bunch of TBR for Korean readathon. That's something I really want to participate. I've already downloaded ebooks for If I Had Your Face, and I read a few chapters this morning and really enjoyed it, as well as the readathon book that everyone's reading, and I forgot the name. Oh my gosh, I am definitely getting way too hungry that my brain is not functioning, but I really wanted to read that one too. If I can get more Korean books, that I definitely want to give my try at it as well. If you are an avid library user, I highly recommend checking out your local library's pickup service. I think it's called remote pickup service or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but you can place your request of books specifically that's available at your branch, or you can give them some of your favorite books and author that you've read in the past, and they will pull out books to fit your preference, so like reader advisory type of thing. Obviously nowadays I think the libraries are still closed, but those curbside pickup are available, at least a few of the systems near where I live, so I'm definitely going to do that, hopefully with a few books. So maybe whatever my librarian surprised me, and I want to venture out and read more English novels for the rest of the second half of this year. So that wraps up, oh my gosh, this video is getting way too long. That wraps up my mid-year freakout tag. Overall, a bunch of great, excellent Chinese BL novels, a few really good thought-provoking non-fiction ones, and that's written in English of course, but in terms of English novels, I wouldn't say I had the best luck. Thank you so much for watching. This is me and Yolanda. Thank you, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So I'll see you in my next video.